There's a quiet story many artists absorb without ever consciously agreeing to it, that art is extra, that it's decorative, optional, or indulgent, that when the world gets serious, political, economic, urgent, art should politely step aside. And if you're an artist who paints flowers, portraits, domestic scenes, or quiet moments, this story can feel especially convincing. But history tells us something else entirely. Again and again, across cultures and centuries, art is treated as dangerous precisely because it shapes how people see. When power feels threatened, artists are not ignored, they are controlled. Tell me in the comments, where did you first learn the idea that art was extra or impractical? Was it said directly or absorbed quietly? Hi, I'm Carrie, and I'm here to remind you of something important. You are already an artist. Here on Artist Strong, I help creatives stop feeling like copyists or hobbyists and start creating their first real series of artwork, work that reflects who they are and what they care about. If you are ready to move beyond DIY learning and want the support and structure to finally draw and paint with your unique voice, I am here to help. You can sign up for my free workshop, How to Transform Your Ideas into Artwork That Is Uniquely Yours. Thousands of artists have already joined the community, and the workshop is completely free. You will find the link below. What artists actually do in society. Artists don't just make objects, we perform social labor that is difficult to measure but impossible to replace. We make invisible experiences visible, give form to emotions before language catches up, preserve memory when official histories try to smooth it over, offer alternatives to the world as it currently exists. Art trains people to notice, and noticing is the beginning of choice. That's why art has never existed only inside museums or studios. It appears on cave walls, textiles, religious objects, protest signs, children's drawings, and kitchen tables. Long before art markets existed, art helped humans orient themselves. When people ask me my favorite art period, they are surprised to hear prehistoric art as my answer. I've been to some Neolithic sites, seen cave drawings, and hope someday to see Venus figurine in real life. I am literally moved to tears by this art. Consider the context in which these artists lived. They lived nomadic lives, hunting and gathering constantly. They had other tribes or clans they might encounter who could be both friend or foe. They had almost none of the security often spoken about in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But they made art. Before we invented language or letters, we made art. When I look at those prehistoric artworks, I see our humanity in that work. I'd love to know, what role has art played in your life, not as a product, but as a way of understanding something? Art history is full of receipts. When we look closely at art history, not just the greatest hits, but the context, a pattern emerges. Francisco Goya, refusing the hero narrative. In the early 1800s, Spanish painter Francisco Goya created a series of etchings now known as the disasters of war. These images did not glorify battle or patriotism. Instead, they showed executions, famine, mutilation, and civilian suffering. What made this work radical wasn't just its subject matter, it was Goya's refusal to explain or justify violence. He didn't offer moral lessons or heroic framing, he simply showed what happened. In a time and era where people had much less access to visual media, work like this was even more shocking. In fact, the prints were so politically dangerous, they were not published during his lifetime. Goya wasn't campaigning, he was witnessing. Käthe Kollwitz, Centering Grief and Care. German artist Käthe Kollwitz focused almost entirely on working-class families, mothers, hunger, and loss. After her son Peter was killed in World War I, grief became central to her work. Rather than depicting battles or leaders, Kollwitz drew parents clutching children, women bent under exhaustion, and figures weighed down by sorrow. Her work insisted that the cost of war was not abstract. The Nazi regime considered her art dangerous. She was banned from exhibiting and forced to resign from the Prussian Academy of Arts. Why? Because grief disrupts propaganda. Care disrupts nationalism. Diego Rivera, making labor visible. Mexican mural artist Diego Rivera believed art belonged to the public. His large-scale murals depicted workers, indigenous history, agriculture, and industry, often in government buildings and public spaces. Rivera's work challenged who was considered worthy of representation. He made labor monumental. He placed everyday people into the visual language historically reserved for gods and elites. This made patrons uneasy. His famous Rockefeller Center mural was destroyed because it included imagery that challenged capitalist power. Rivera's lesson is simple. Visibility is political. Faith Ringgold, Personal Stories as Cultural Record. Faith Ringgold's story quilts combine painting, quilting, text, and personal narrative. They tell stories of Black womanhood, family, racism, and resilience, often drawn from Ringgold's own life. By using quilting, a medium historically dismissed as craft or woman's work, Ringgold challenges hierarchies of value in the art world. Her work insisted that lived experience belongs in the historical record. Ringgold's art doesn't shout, it speaks clearly and unapologetically. Where do you downplay your own experience as too small or not universal enough to matter? Ai Weiwei. Art as accountability. Contemporary artist Ai Weiwei uses installation, architecture, and social media to confront censorship, surveillance, and state violence in China. His work has led to imprisonment, confiscation of his passport, and constant monitoring. Ai Weiwei's career makes something unmistakably clear. Art that encourages independent thought threatens authoritarian control. Reflection question. What kind of thinking does your work encourage? Speed, consumption, certainty, or reflection? Why autocratic systems control art? Censorship isn't about aesthetics, it's about fear. Autocratic regimes rely on a single approved narrative, simplified identities, predictable responses. Artists disrupt all three. Art teaches people to sit with ambiguity, feel empathy beyond prescribed categories, imagine alternatives. That internal freedom, the ability to interpret rather than obey, is what power fears most. When you create, where do you feel most free, and where do you still self-censor? How art supports political freedom without making slogans. Political freedom isn't only about voting or policy, it's about the freedom to perceive, question, and imagine. Art strengthens emotional literacy, preserves complexity, humanizes people reduced to categories, keeps alternative futures imaginable. A society that can imagine more is harder to control. You don't need to paint protests to contribute to this, but I just paint flowers. Good, because painting a flower says, this moment deserves attention. Beauty is not frivolous. Slowness has value. Life is worth noticing. Portraits say, this person matters. A face is not disposable. Identity is layered. These say, growth takes time. We are part of something larger. In cultures obsessed with productivity and certainty, attention itself becomes an act of resistance. Additionally, here are 50 ways your art helps others to continue this conversation, and I have that linked below. Reflection. What does your subject matter quietly insist is worth caring about? Why this matters for artists today. When artists believe their work is optional, power doesn't have to silence them. They silence themselves. Artist Strong is not about ego or grandiosity. It's about responsibility, not to be loud, not to be political in a prescribed way, but to be honest, to see clearly, to feel deeply, to refuse flattening. That work has always mattered. After a reading or watching this, what feels truer about your role as an artist than it did before? Write it down. Remember, you don't make art after the world is fixed. You make art so people remember what fixing the world is for. Proudly call yourself an artist. Together we are Artist Strong.